All right, so I want to give you a breakdown of what the heck the Are You Menstrual podcast Patreon is and who it is good for, and then show you what this month's resource is and just like what you can expect if you were to join. So I'm making this Patreon as a way to extend what I talk about on the podcast and bring in bonus episodes and additional resources depending on what we're talking about. So for example, season 4 is going to start on March 6th, and that first episode is on hair mineral testing and just understanding hair mineral testing, why we use it, the efficacy, all that kind of stuff. And then the bonus episode for the Patreon members will be case studies. So I'm going to walk through a few different hair tests with different types of client cases, and then go through like what we learned from their hair mineral test. And then the PDF resource will be like a little hair test cheat sheet takeaway thing. So that's like one example of how the Patreon is going to expand on the Are You Menstrual podcast and what's already going to be put out there. And then, so each week, that's what it would look like. All members will get access to that content. And then we have an exclusive members level, and they also have Q&A. So you can submit a voicemail question, and then I go through and answer a bunch of the questions and post the recording, and it's all timestamped so you can fast forward to your question. But that's like my goal, and that's what it will look like each month when the podcast is running. When the podcast is not running, I'll do a Q&A every single week for the exclusive members. We'll still have regular content. It's just going to be based off the surveys and what the patrons want to learn about. So I'm going to do probably at least a monthly survey, maybe more frequently, depending on how much feedback I get, and ask for topics that you want to learn more about. I have so many in mind already that I want to cover, but I want to make sure that it's applicable to everyone that's inside and paying for the service, obviously. So we'll do that. I'm going to bring in guest experts. And so we'll do like podcast type episodes with them, but it would only be for the Patreon, and it would be like in between when the podcast isn't in season. But that's really what it's going to look like. So there's always going to be resources and helpful episodes. Sometimes a podcast will be going and there'll be like a regular podcast and a bonus. And then sometimes it'll just be that bonus episode when we're not in season. So I just wanted to give you a little insight into like, okay, it's not in season now. What will I get right now if I sign up for the Patreon? So right now, you would get this really awesome, well, I think it's really awesome, functional blood panel reference guide. And I have a metabolic panel, what the functional ranges are for the different labs, and then what the interpretation could possibly mean, like high levels or low levels. We have it for lipid panel, like cholesterol, CBC. I've got an iron panel in here, a thyroid panel, and then some blood sugar markers. And it is a Google Sheet so that any updates that I make will automatically be given to you, since when it comes to things like blood work and stuff, I might want to add things to it, especially if I do, like I want to do a bonus episode on vitamin D and then have the different labs for interpreting vitamin D and kind of like assessing your status, is supplementation appropriate, all that kind of stuff. So I'll add stuff to this as we go. But this is something that you'll get right away if you join on February 1st. So I hope this gives you a little insight into the Are You Menstrual podcast Patreon. I'm really excited about it. I'm excited to get direct feedback and to connect more with my podcast listeners. And I hope to see you inside.